to show you how to carve this decorative wheat effect around the edge of this breadboard. The board I got from a store. You could make it. It just saved me a lot of time in preparing. The pattern is interesting in that it's set into the board as opposed to being put on the top like a lot of mouldings. And it's created by a series of cuts with just a couple of tools building up. So it looks quite effective. Anyway, there it is. I'm going to show you how to do it.
Here's my sample. Wheat on one side, and with a few changes of cut we've got a barley effect over here. I'm using a fishtail gouge. This gives us access into the corners more. And before I start, the first thing I have to do is create a sort of little blank, almost a moulding. In fact, we could call it a moulding. So I'll do that first on this side of my block. First thing I'm going to do is use this marking gauge with the pin to create quite a deep scored line, pressing in here. So that's quite a deep line, and that represents one side of that blank. Now the width of the blank is something like the width of the tool plus half again. So I'll put a second line there. You don't have to be too accurate, but you do want to be consistently inaccurate if you like. So there's my two outside edges. Now to create the sort of rounded bit in the middle, I'm going to take this V tool, tilt it to one side, and take out from the waist, take out a cut along here. This thing doesn't want to be too deep, no more than say 1/8 of an inch at this size. Then tilting this side, so I've got more of a vertical wall against the outside. Take this side off here. Coming right up to the line. Make sure that's nice and neat. Now because this is a chisel and therefore flat, what I need to do is round this over. So I'm using a number 3 fishtail gouge, but it doesn't have to be fishtail in this case, just to take that hard edge off, the chamfer if you like, and run that along. So you would put this, you'd put this sort of shape wherever you want on your subject. Now we need to step out the repeating pattern. Here's the gouge again, same one I use, 1.5 over here, but this way it's actually the same width as the gouge, and you can step it off using the gouge itself like this, but I'm going to use this marking gauge to make it clearer for you. So when I do this, I try and line those dots right in the middle. That helps line things up here. Okay, so I've got now a row of middle dots. So now we start our cuts. Now the first cut we do vertical or slightly tilted like that, high angle grip. From the center point, pull this around till it meets the edge here and press in quite strongly. In a softwood you wouldn't need a mallet. Repeat that here and then repeat it, and I would do all the same side at the same time. When you finish one side, repeat symmetrically on the other side as best you can. So from the center, pushing out like this, work your way down. Again, not undercutting, if anything leaning it back a little bit. Okay, so at this stage you will have a sort of set of chevrons going along like that in cuts, and now we're going to give them a bit of shadow by making the same cut but at an angle. So I'm going to lean back at about 60 degrees or so and just take out that little chip there. And if I've made my first cut deep enough, that chip should just come out. If it doesn't, then you're going to have to just nick it off like this, and that's fairly common until you get the sort of hang of it. But once you've been doing this a few times, you'll make each cut. So this is not too deep. And what I would do is I would make sure that when you've done a little section, just go over that and just make sure everything is tidy, because you don't want to go back at the end and start messing around, because you'll miss stuff. So we're going to the other side like so. Just a little swing the handle round from there to there, trying to match both sides so they're as even as you can. So again, just little fibres not quite coming loose. Just take those off. There we go. So at the end of this stage, you have something more like that. So they've got chevrons, but I'm going to change these now into wheat proper. And to this, I'm going to, actually for me it's easier to turn it around this way. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take off this hard corner here, basically. And for that I'm using a fishtail number 3. And what I'm going to do is come here, push like this, push the corner down at an angle. So like this. So I'm pushing the corner and swinging the handle back, making this cut here. And we should, using the same tool, be able to pull that out with the corner of our fishtail gouge. So we're slicing against the wall here and nicking in there. See, so I've made this cut and I've done them all the same. Then I could probably come along here and just push that corner in into here, all the same like this. Some of them will pop out. And then I would take this one, just nick that off like that. If all goes well, they'll pop out. And then you do the other side, the same sort of movement. So the corner, think of the corner more than anything, goes down, not too deep, like this, swinging round. Same consistent cut, which is the secret of all moulding. It's really good practice. So that corner's gone in, and then here. If you didn't, or found this too deep, you could of course use a skew chisel here. But if everything's gone right, and you haven't gone too deep, you should be able to take this off with this fishtail gouge. So now they're starting to look a bit like wheat. And to give them a bit of flair, what you can do is two things. You can take this tool like this, which is a very deep, a 10 or 11 little veiner, little deep gouge at about 2 millimeters, 32nd, and just add a little bit of a, oops, little cut like this, just fill in those bank spaces. And on this side, trying to spin it round. So just little nicks like that. And then finally, what I like to do is I've got here a nail that I've ground down to a tiny little blunt pin. And I'm going to put that right in here and create a little bit of a shadow just in that junction there. So just tap that in. Tiny little detail, but it's a nice accent. So there's our wheat. And again, as I said, you want to make sure that these are cleaned up as you go along. So I'm doing this quite quickly, but when you get into the mood and the pattern, you'll be able to make sure that all those junctions are nice and tidy.